I'll tell you one thing that
Hey, when my girls start to trip and hate before escape, I call Sirius XM 98. Yeah, Thursdays, Foxhole 7 and 9 to talk to ZoWilliams before I lose my mind. Yo, I need advice on my relationship, cause I'm about to start breaking. I can't take it no more. I got to holler at Zo, the relationship pro. Before I pack up and go, I got my foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason. I got one foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's none other than the voice of reason. Zometheus Rising, Foxhole Radio in the building. Sirius XM 98. Rain, sleet, or snow, you know I'm going to get on and do the show. You know what I mean? You know how I do. We got a great topic. I'm here at the Washington D.C. Convention Center. And, man, it is crazy over here. The weather has taken front seat. But that doesn't mean we're not going to have a great show. We got a bunch of guests lined up. Tonight's topic, I need you to get to your phone lines because I know a lot of people are very opinionated about it. Of course, we're down here talking about MLK and the memorial and the giant 30-foot monument. Oh, man, it's crazy. But I want to give you guys the topic, and I want you to call me and let me know your opinion on MLK. Tonight's topic, MLK's Dream Progress Report Show. How far have we come since the taking of a king? 855-369-9898. That's 855-369-9898. I'm in D.C. right now, and I'm manning the Twitter page myself. So if you're on Twitter, I want you to reach out to me at ZoWilliams or at Foxhole. That's FOXXHOLE. Please reach out to me. I will be responding to you personally. So if you say something stupid, my response will be coming directly at... I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. I love all my people.
You got a co-host tonight.
Who's my co-host?
Me.
Who is me?
Yeah, Sky Black.
Sky Black?
Sky Black.
I've never seen a black sky.
No, Guy Black. How you doing?
Guy Black. Good to have you, sir.
Williams, you're the sole survivor.
It's what I do.
You're the only Foxhole staff that made it through.
Made it through. What?
Yeah,
well, tell the people what happened.
Well, what's going on here is obviously people know about the weather on the East Coast and the hurricane threat, Irene, and the MLK festivities here have been canceled for the weekend.
You mean all of the festivities?
Well, basically there's going to be some going on tomorrow, which is Friday afternoon, and then on the Saturday and Sunday and tomorrow night, Sunday was the big dedication, it's going to be postponed until a later date, sometime in September or October. So
wow,
that's where we are right now with it, Zoe, and our Foxhole staff was flying in. We had to stop there. I just ate dinner with Reverend Jackson. He come up in here like this.
Wow. So
you know that's my man right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing. Tonight's topic, MLK's Dream Progress Report Show. How far have we come since the taking of a king? Call us, 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. We're about to do this in a second.
No, don't take the break yet. Don't take the break. No, this is our house.
This our house? Yeah. We could do it? Okay, we got some heavy people in the building.
Michael Dyson.
Eric Michael Dyson, and of course, none other than Dr. Reverend Jesse Jackson is in the building. Welcome. I didn't expect this. We were just eating, and we saw you guys, but I didn't expect you guys to come up and share like this. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've just tuned in to the Voice of Reason with ZoWilliams, Foxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98. The number to dial is 855-369-9898.
I thought he was going to pick up our meal.
Oh, no, he wasn't going to.
We did pick it up, and we put it down.
I picked the meal and dropped the tab.
Well, I'm glad you guys were able to participate. Let me just start this off. Seeing that I got you guys, I just want to get right into it. We're doing a progress report of the dream, and we're trying to figure out how far have we come since the taking of a king.
You know, we must know where we were. The dream was within a certain context. The day that he gave that speech, from Texas around to Florida up to Maryland, we could not take a picture on the lawn of a state capitol. But dogs could. My senior class graduates from high school, we could not take a picture on the lawn of the Capitol. Black soldiers had to sit behind lots of POWs on American military bases at that time. Our money was counterfeit. You could not buy ice cream in the front door of Howard Johnson or rent a room at Holiday Inn.
Wow.
We were distinctly trapped on legal apartheid, the kind that they taught South Africa how to do. Combine that with, if you break the rules, you lose your job. Or you lose your life. It was state-sponsored terrorism. And Dr. King's first part of that speech was, which is never really dealt with, is that 100 years after you promised to change this, we joined the Union to beat the South in the Civil War and got freed from slavery. And you promised. And after 12 years, you broke the promise. And here we are 100 years later. The dream is, I dream of a day when you will honor the promise. The promise is the issue, but the promise carries with it a budget. The promise carries with it with legislation and regulation. The promise carries with it work. We won that. We won those battles. Dr. King won the battle at Montgomery. We won the battle at Birmingham. We won the battle at Selma. We won the battle in Chicago for open housing. He was a freedom fighter, and my fear about the monument is the attempt to make him palatable to rascals, make him a poet. He was poetic, but he was not a poet in that sense. He was a freedom fighter who spoke poetically to communicate. He was that. But willingness to go to jail, where he went more than 20 times, to be stabbed, to die, he was the revolutionary of our time. And I don't want in any of our interpretation to lose Dr. Dyson, the revolutionary character. He developed a technique, defeated the opposition. And that becomes the challenge for our president today, is that you cannot go from negotiation to reconciliation. You've got to fight to get the crown and fight to keep the crown. If you don't fight, you can't get it and you can't keep it. And he fought it, and we won, and we must now, and whenever we use our vote, like in 2008, we keep it. We didn't vote in 2010, we lost it. It's an ongoing fight.
Reverend Jackson and of course, Eric Michael Dyson, do you guys think he would approve of the monument today? I mean, you knew him. Do you think he would approve of the grandiosity of it all?
Well, his point was in his last speech, he said, I received all of these awards, but what really matters is not the awards, but doing God's will. There was a way of saying he did not put a lot of investment. He said one time, when he gave all the Nobel Peace Prize money away, that he thought if he left any big bank account, it would be a mark upon his legacy, for example. He would not buy the SCLC building. He argued was if you keep serving, people keep contributing. If you stop serving, you don't deserve to stay in business. So he was kind of, to that extent, he was non-materialistic in that sense. I think he would have an appreciation, however, of the meaning of that statue in that place. Because for him, it's not the issue between the journey between him and Lincoln, Washington, and Jefferson. It's 164 miles from Jamestown where the slave ships landed. That would be his mission, not high. And right now, he stands taller than them. These guys were at best national leaders. Beyond America, Abraham Lincoln, who? Jefferson, who? George Washington, who? But if you're in South Africa, Mark
you know what
if
Martin
you're
Luther
in
King
China, if you're in Britain, if you're in Asia. And so he is the global figure, Nobel Peace Laureate. He is the tallest tree in the forest on the monument.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's as Reverend Jackson said, 30 feet high, which is 11 feet higher than the 19 feet of those two figures. So even in death, he's still breaking barriers. And I think he would have appreciated, as Reverend Jackson said, the fact that he's been planted in the soil of the national political memory. He's an icon to be regarded along with those figures. Thomas Jefferson, who owned slaves, George Washington, who did the same, Abraham Lincoln, who then, of course, from coercion set them free, but Martin Luther King Jr. was a private citizen. These men were presidents. This man was a private citizen, and yet he organized a struggle to redefine democracy and to resist it. De Tocqueville, when he came here 100 years and some hints before Dr. King said that progressively America would feel a tension between its ideals and its realities. The reality is that Dr. King and great soldiers like Reverend Jesse Jackson, let's not forget, this year will mark his 70th birthday. So here is a man who was handed the baton, who took it even higher, ran even faster, because Martin Luther King Jr. is known for creating the context for the endurance race that people like Reverend Jesse Jackson or Mayor Marion Berry, who came out of the movement of SNCC and then created the contest against white supremacy, social injustice, economic inequality. And when we talk about Dr. King, we can't talk about him without talking about those men and women who came after him, who created greater social change than we had ever yet imagined.
Wow. And you just mentioned former Mayor Marion Berry. He's in the building with us as well. Welcome to the Voice of Reason, Mr. Mayor Marion Berry. Thank you very much. This panel is getting ever so diverse, and I appreciate it. Let me ask you guys this question really quickly. What would Martin Luther King think of hip hop, right? Especially where it sits today, as far as the content and what's being said. What would he think of that?
He appreciated the cultural context of his time. Dr. King was 26 years old. He read the culture. He helped put the first money up for SNCC. He understood the youth movement. He was 26 himself. In his own point of view, he was just the hip hop of that day.
Wow.
As an interpreter of the times. I mean, hip-hop is at best this tremendous stylistic skill to describe what's going on. Dr. King described what was going on and then turned it into a planned for action. That may be the difference between him and traditional hip-hoppers who are like musicians and entertainers. He was the entertainer, the emancipator. We had both the capacity to explain it and a scheme to realize what he had seen. That took him to another level. But he would appreciate, the art of Jay-Z, the art, the art of Tupac, he would have to appreciate it. He couldn't be who he was and not appreciate that.
Marion Berry?
But Jesse, though, I think hip-hop is really like a social movement and such, out of the culture of our experience. These young men and women are expressing themselves through music and through words. It takes a genius to stand on the stage and just all of a sudden make up a whole song.
I'm just going to soak all this in. I'm just going to soak it all in.
But remember, it's radio, so introduce yourself.
No, this is Rev Yearwood. I'm just so honored to be here from the president of the Hip Hop Caucus with Michael Eric Dyson, Marion Berry, and Reverend Jackson. This is an honor to be sitting here, but it's also, for me, it's also for our generation. This is our lunch kind of moment for the 21st century.
I think so.
Because we're still dealing with
so
poverty.
It's about generation, but there's intergenerational. Tupac's mama was in SNCC. We did our first
and a Black Panther
in the '84 campaign for the presidency. Tupac did, along with his mom, did at the Apollo Theater in New York. They were doing free concerts, raising money. So the continuity between SNCC, Panthers, 84 campaign is unbroken continuity. Now, what Dr. King made him different was, one may say that the gospel takes us to a higher level of music inspiration. And the blues, we go down twice and come up once. That's explaining how we feel. But Dr. King turned those expressions into an action plan. That becomes the challenge of hip-hop, and to turn pain into power. That's what made Dr. King change legislation, not just music and meaning. He changed meaning into legislation. So today we are protected by law in ways because he made the case that we live in our faith, but we live under the law. We're inspired by our music. We live under. You can be a hip hop and go to the back of the bus unless you change that law. You can be hip hop and not have the right to vote unless you change that law. And what made Dr. King different was he led them to change the laws.
Wow.
We had music before hip hop, and we had faith, before 1965. We didn't have the laws to protect us for 100 years later.
Wow.
He led that movement.
Wow.
Well,
Michael?
I think that I'm sorry. I think that the fact is, too, is that, as Reverend Jackson has said, Martin Luther King Jr. said that he refused to anymore castigate those young people who were on the front lines of social protest and resistance, even during the riots, if he wasn't going to criticize what was going on with the war in Vietnam. So the reality is, as much as we might talk about the violence that is undeniably present in some expressions of hip-hop, Dr. King would have related that to what's going on in Iran, in Iraq. He would have talked about what's going on in Afghanistan. He would have spoken about what's going on in Tripoli and in Libya and in the Arab Spring, who took an example of nonviolent social resistance, social media, that Reverend Yearwood has been so brilliant about, and then leveraging the authority of hip-hop. Hip-hop was a cry of judgment against both bourgeois capitulation to the larger society and the refusal to acknowledge their humanity. When Reverend Jackson said, "I am somebody," that was a cry. Look, he's one of the first leaders to come out of the ghettos of our cities to speak. Dr. King was a man of middle-class status who committed class suicide. He got down to wearing 2 and 3 suits. He gave all his money away. But Reverend Jackson grew up out of that. Marion Berry struggling against the odds. Hip-hop understands that. So sometimes when we dismiss them, we're dismissing an entire generation of insight. Hush that fuss. Everybody move to the back of the bus. Do you want to bump or slump with us? I met a gypsy, and she hit me to some life game to stimulate and activate the left and right brain. Listen to what they're saying, and they're often crying out for somebody to take them seriously. Biggie said, back in the days, our parents used to take care of us. Look at them now. They're even scared of us, calling the city for help because they can't maintain. Darn things done change. Right. I mean, you got to listen to what they're saying. And I think Dr. King would have listened to them, as Reverend Jackson talked about, and then tapped into that energy and resource.
So how do we hold them? How do we hold them?
First went to Watts.
Go ahead, Jesse.
During the riot season, he came back and told us a story of how some kids had run past the power center. They didn't understand the power of the generator in downtown in Watts, which controlled the lights for all of Beverly Hills, for example. They ran past the power center to break into a liquor store. Somebody understood as direct. He said, then coming down the street, 3 young men had on their backs a television. They had broken in this open television. And he said, but what struck me about it, he said, was they ran past the police, and the police stepped back and wouldn't shoot them. He said, they said, damn it, recognize me. He understood the long and that their struggle for recognition and for self-respect was the issue, not the television. So Martin was the premier interpreter of our struggle. I mean, he was that gap between street talk and church talk, but in fact could talk both. And so I think that what strikes me the most, before I really have to go here, is that he was cut down at 39. What was his unfinished business? How would it apply today? Today we have more music, art, culture. Having said that, we're still in the hull of the ship.
Right.
We're number 1 in infant mortality, number 1 in short life expectancy, number 1 in home foreclosures,
STDs.
number 1 in attack of hate crime. So we have a black captain of the ship, but the passengers still in the hull, and rich folks still are on the deck and in the cabins. So our struggle is to get out of that hull to get our share of sunshine. Ain't no sunshine in that hole. And that becomes, and therefore we must become political.
But Jesse, the problem is, how do we continue to get that kind of message to the mass of our people who don't understand that there's too many African Americans who think that things are all right now, and there are too many young people that don't know our history. You know, I have this philosophy that as long as a lion tells the story, he will be king of the jungle. And we just have to start figuring out more and more, and this is one way tonight, and other ways to tell that story so that those who are us in the hull, even though I have a title, I'm still in the hull.
Well, there's a reality check that sets in. Like if Mommy said, if I can't tell you, police will explain it to you better.
Yeah.
Like a reality check. So I ask the people that I usually go to church, I ask if I have basic questions. You know somebody, you have a relative in jail, and people look, you have a relative in jail, about 75% stand all the time. Ooh. Do you know somebody who is facing home foreclosure behind in their rent?
Wow.
Ooh, everybody kind of gets up. Then I say, well, do you know somebody who's in student loan debt? Yeah. Credit card debt? Yeah. You know somebody looking for a job? Yes. Well, that's a reality check. Whatever, you cannot use credit cards as a cushion from pain for so long. At some point, The credit card can no longer be the pushing from pain. Therefore, you go from pain to fight.
Right.
So we have a generation now that wants to reconcile without fighting. You've reconciled after the war's over. You got to fight. To get the crown, you got to fight to keep the crown. And that's part of what the challenge in President Obama, because his basic notion is reconciliation.
Right.
But you got to fight to get the crown.
You still got to fight.
Or you got to fight to keep it.
Okay, so look, I got to take a quick break, but I don't want you to leave. I just got one more question to ask you guys before you leave. Can I ask the question? If King were alive today, how would he respond to the criticism that Obama is receiving? I'd like to know that before. We got to take this break, and then when we come back, we're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. I get your answer, please. Okay, no break. Forget the break.
Well,
go ahead.
Dr. King was distinguished between the president and the presidency. As a person, he no doubt would have endorsed him. He chose Kennedy over Nixon. We were still at the march for the public accommodation bill, the March on Washington. That was what. So it was not a march on Kennedy's march for public accommodations. He would not march because Kennedy had a reputation of being a good guy. He supported Johnson over Goldwater. And he got a Nobel Peace Prize and came back to why Johnson had done all these things, like the 64 Civil Rights Bill. He said, Mr. Johnson, we need a Voting Rights Act. President Johnson's response was, you know, I like you very much, Dr. King, but the fact is I can't give you the right to vote. Worst news is the Congress won't give it, so you can't have the right to vote. And if you get it, we'll lose the South for 30 years. Dr. King said, okay, we're going to Selma. We hit the streets. And so while he supported Johnson over Nixon, over Goldwater. So the point is you can support President Barack and still fight. Matter of fact, fighting is his ally. Our silence will hurt the president. Our lack of activity, because if we just internalize our pain, he has no street action makes presidents great. The World War II soldiers demanding recognition, and Truman signed the executive order to destroy the military. The protests made Truman great. The people in Little Rock who protested not having the right to go to Central School and Eisenhower sent the troops in and nationalized the troops. Protests make good presidents great. We made Kennedy great he had the trust between Dr. King and Wallace. He chose Dr. King. We made Johnson great so that our inaction hurts the president. Our action is the key to his salvation. Because if we don't act, there's no air in the balloon. In the ball, and you can't bounce the ball without air. And even if you play Sweet Georgia Brown, you got to have air in the ball.
And what Reverend Jackson said very briefly, to piggyback on what he said, think about A. Philip Randolph going to have dinner with FDR. And he said, look, everything you ask me, I believe it, and I go out there and make me do it. This is what Reverend Jackson is saying. Unless there is street heat, there cannot be presidential response. And it's not, and I will say this. I think Dr. King would have said, always make it principled criticism. He didn't believe, no matter how bad LBJ get, no matter how bad Bull Connor got, he never called Bull Connor a cracker. Not to his face and not in public. He never said, well, let me say it that way. He never said that LBJ was an SOB, and LBJ called him a GDN preacher. The point is, I think there's a difference between principled criticism leveraging the authority of our understanding of the world in contrast to Mr. Obama's, then calling them names and then joining those who want to see him dead or those who undermine him. There's a difference between having personal beef with the president because you couldn't get a ticket or you couldn't get to the table and being mad as a result of that, as opposed to principal criticism. Dr. King didn't want to go to nobody's inauguration. He ain't tried to get on nobody's list. He tried to represent poor people actually. And poor people's representation is not about what you do in terms of a tour which is important, but it's also how you deal on a daily basis with the inequalities that exist.
Wow.
And so I think at that level, Obama has to be pushed by principled critique, not personal beef. I think in that case, Obama's favorite film is The Godfather. This is what Dr. King believed in. Make it business, not personal.
Wow.
Well, the Black Caucus tour,
That was a great tour.
Like 10,000 people are coming out looking for jobs.
Yes.
Jobs.
That's a great tour.
Then President Obama, he takes the tour, jobs. And they say, if you can go to Iowa and Minnesota, you can come to inner city. Those are principal positions that help strengthen his position. He has to hear that, and if he hears that, we'll all be winners.
Wow.
But Reverend Jackson, let me tell you this to you. I think this is important because I think as many of you who are here, you actually were around Dr. King. You know, Marion Berry, you, Reverend Jackson, were around Dr. King. What's important for our generation is that this is a monument. And so we are going to be looking at you. And I want to make sure I heard, Michael Eric Dyson preach so eloquently at Howard about this, but I want to make sure you know that we aren't able to see what Dr. King would do. We can speculate. We can sit there all day long and say he would have done this, he would have done that. And I'm looking at my good friend Jeff Johnson is here as well. But what we can tell you is that we can see what you have done as you approach 70 and look so well. But you are also showing continuity of the movement. You are showing us that we can't give up, no matter who is the president. You are showing us that we must continue to fight against poverty and fight against those things. That's what you have done for us.
But that was revelation of Dr. King's sermons and messages. You cannot really drive a car unless you read the regulations or fly a plane. Many speculate about him in part, but will not even stop to read. They get immersed deeply enough to understand what the options are. You can't teach what you don't know.
Okay.
And you can't lead where you don't go. You got to, if you're really committed, learn it and then live it.
Right. So we got to take a quick break. This is incredible. Marion Berry, Reverend Yearwood, Jesse Jackson, Michael Eric Dyson, all in the building right now. They have to leave right now, but that's all right. We got more folks coming up.
Well, I'm here.
This is, I know. This is about to be crazy. Call me at 855-369-9898. I got more special guests about to sit down with us and go deeper into this topic. We're about to take a break. I'll be back in 2.2. I'm going to introduce you. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason, has returned to the Foxhole, Sirius XM 98. The Foxhole is the only radio network in the world doing this right now. It's a hurricane going on, but that won't stop the truth. We've got Reverend Jesse Jackson, Marion Berry, and, of course, Reverend Yearwood, and now a new guest, Ramon Bain, sister, in the building, heavy. Everybody's bio is about the size of a phone book right now, so I'm not going to be able to read everybody's bio. However, we need to get back to tonight's topic, which is MLK's Dream Progress Report. How far have we come since the taking of a king? 855-369-9898 is the number to dial. Let's get back to it. This show is crazy so far. Let me ask, Tavis Smiley and Cornel West, these guys are out there, promoting their poverty tour and things of that nature, and they've had some strong criticism for the president. My question, as this is the MLK weekend, is still going to go strong here. Would he approve of this openly public and kind of scathing criticism of the president? Would he approve?
Well, I think that in a democracy, there ought to be room for legitimate concerns and protests, as long as Michael said, as long as it's not personal. Mm-hmm. If the president's program doesn't meet the needs of the people that we serve, I think we have a responsibility to do that in public dialogue, as well as in personal dialogue with him. The
more access people have privately, the less protest there is public in terms of communicating with people. Mm-hmm. The Congressional Black Caucus should really have a permanent liaison to the White House. Just as a way of keeping communication. The Black Caucus should not be able to suggest that they have not been communicated with, 44 of them. Just that, truth like electricity requires a conduit. Mm-hmm. Just having conduits. I remember that when Clinton was president, every other week, Gore would have maybe 10 or 15 leaders at his place discussing everything from philosophy to warfare, just keeping lines open. So I think that's the key. But don't confuse this, I think. Those protests are canaries in the mine. Mm-hmm. When they say the poor have not been addressed, they haven't been, but they need to be. That's the key to our salvation. And the Congressional Black Caucus is saying the same thing. Don't consider a canary to be the enemy, because there's some more birds down there. Mm-hmm. We need to address in a meaningful way growing poverty in this country on the terms of the people who have lost their homes, their jobs, and now many of them are losing their way. Mm-hmm. So I would think Dr. King's point would be, which I think Marion was saying, is that make these challenges principle and not attacks. When they come personal attacks begat personal attacks.
Right.
Let's keep it on a high level.
Ramon Bain?
Well, let me just say this. I know Reverend Jackson has to leave, and I think that the purpose for my being here, as having been Michael Jackson's general manager and spokesperson, and what would Michael Jackson think about what's going on now. But I want to say that I would not be here, and we would not have been able to attain certain things that we did if it had not been for Reverend Jackson. And I asked him to stay, and of course I'm honored to be here with former Mayor Berry, who I have known a long time and whom I worked for. But let me just say that there have been a lot of things disseminated in the media, a lot of misrepresentations about Michael Jackson. But let me just say this, that causes me to be a bit sad, because Mrs. King and I were very close. We were born on April 27th, and no matter where she was or where I was, we always talked. Even when she was extremely ill, we talked to each other. One of the last conversations she had prior to her death, maybe 3 or 4 days before she died, Michael Jackson called her. And I'm saddened because neither one of them are here. Michael Jackson gave over $300 million in his lifetime to charity. But one of the things that he did, he was as Coretta and as Dr. King. They were trailblazers. He admired, he loved, he respected, and he opened doors for many, many people. And if it had not been for Reverend Jackson working with me, and we saved his Sony ATV loan and catalog, that's the Beatles. We purchased, Reverend Jackson was on his financial board. We purchased 3 additional publishing works in 2007. We purchased Famous Music, which gave him an additional 660,000 songs.
Wow.
We purchased Joni Mitchell's catalog, which gave him an additional 200 songs, and we purchased the Lieber Stoller catalog, which gave him all of Elvis Presley's.
Wow.
And if it had not been for the support and the team effort of Reverend Jackson with me, and our talking to Michael Jackson, advising him, walking with him, because he was being tremendously cremated during that time. There were a number of people who were lobbying against him and working against him, and Reverend Jackson was there with us every step of the way. And you're not reading that now, and you're not hearing that now, and you're not hearing about the many things that we were able to accomplish, but we will, because, you know, sometimes the truth rises to the top.
Absolutely. All the time.
You know, he had a very, very warm and respectful relationship with the Reverend. And if it weren't not for him, we would not have been able to accomplish what we did. But in that road, the Reverend always reminded Michael Jackson of the struggles that came before him and of the continuous struggles that he was going to have as a result of his trying to be a trailblazer and trying to open doors that had not been opened. And it is because of Dr. King that Michael Jackson was able to be the king of pop.
Wow.
And to own right now, as we sit here, 1.6 million songs.
Wow.
That people don't realize he has, but it was as a result of his strong respect for and admiration for Dr. King. Dr. King's protege, Reverend Jesse Jackson, working with him all of those years as he stepped out of Santa Maria. The only person who came to Santa Maria, California, when Michael Jackson was being confronted with all of those harsh accusations, the only person who came to Santa Maria was Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Well, I want to thank the Reverend for coming in and sharing this vast information you have. We appreciate you. We know you have to leave.
Let me thank you, and I really want to thank, of course, Marion, who means so much to me when we were in this, in our formative years, and Marion helped to form SNCC. Dr. King put the first money for SNCC.
Absolutely.
Because he saw the interrelationship. I remember one day I was doing the expo, just after Dr. King had been killed, just after he'd been killed. And Junius Griffin, who worked with Dr. King, had gone to be the publicist director for Motown. he said, we got some kids who want to perform at the Expo. I said, they can't do it because we have Sammy Davis Jr., we have Nancy Wilson, we have Cannonball, we have Quincy Jones. Program was packed with Marvin Gaye. There's no more room in the end. He said, well, but they're performing across the street at the Regal. I said, I understand that, but there's no more room. At least come downstairs and speak to the kids. And they were in this pickup, in this station wagon with the a U-Haul attached to it. And it was Michael and the family. Then I couldn't say no. Right. So they performed that Saturday afternoon. And, of course, that was it. And we have it on film, by the way. It's in the movie Save the Children. But here you're talking about 12 people living in 4 rooms. You cannot separate them except from family, leaving Gary drug-free, leaving as a family intact. When others were playing basketball, they were playing music, using their living room floor as their stage, and using these gifts to become the best in the world of what they became. And his music never brought us disgrace, whether it was Thriller or Black and White, because there was a sense of family dignity about music connected with the values of Barry Gordy, for that matter. And so in Michael's most formative years, we were there. When he was in the greatest crisis, we were there with him. And I never discussed it as Attorney Bain is discussing it now. I don't want people to misread it, but when Michael was in the real challenge and his being and freedom was threatened, we were there with him to the very end. And so we thank God for his life and legacy. For people like Sister Bain who stuck with him to the very end.
Wow.
Jesse, while you're here, I think we ought to.
I think Jesse's about to leave.
Well, no, he's going to stay.
You going to make him stay, Marion?
Yeah, I'm the general.
Well, no, he's going to stay.
I'm the general. He's my homeboy. I wanted him to make the connection between King and his run for the presidency, which we had a lot to do with in terms of King saying there ought to be various routes to freedom. That there's no one route to freedom.
I think the real point is there. We got the right to vote. Then what?
He had the right. He had the courage. He had the tenacity. He had the vision to dare. Black man running for president.
I think that's the operative word is there, because it took a certain audacity to break the mold. When we first ran, the biggest tax came from blacks.
That's
People were saying, why are you doing this? You know you can't win. You're just going to mess up Mondale or Hart. If you run, they might lose.
Right.
I mean for them to lose, because I mean to beat them.
Yes.
I'm running.
You weren't running for exercise. You was trying to win.
President Obama said to me on one occasion, he was at Columbia as a student. We were debating Hart and Mondale, and he said he saw that debate the night and said, this can happen. The whole point is that we were running to sow seeds, and that we won Vermont, an all-white state. We won Michigan, because we were growing in the process. In the end, not only did we register voters and make the South come alive, Democrats were getting the Senate in 86 because we put on 2 million new voters. And between the new black vote in the South and a handful of whites, we began to take the country back. By 88, another amazing thing happened in terms of the King, Jackson, Obama connections, that we found that we had far more popular votes than delegates. The scheme there was to make it 40 to 45% threshold, so it was hard to become a delegate, and then winner take all. So if I get 49.9 and someone else get 50.1, they'd get 100. Freak, that was bad math. So we argued for the case of proportionality, get your proportional delegates according to your popular vote. We won that battle. So by 2008, when President Obama ran, Hillary Clinton wins California barely. She wins Texas barely. She wins Ohio and Pennsylvania barely. On the winner-take-all, on the present Republican rules, she would have been the winner.
Wow.
But we democratized democracy and changed the rules. So he was able to take advantage of new democratic rules that came out of our civil rights audacious struggle. So from Selma to those campaigns to the White House, there's an unbroken line of confrontation and then reconciliation.
But Jesse, you can't live out San Francisco, which was historic for a black man to be seriously considered at the convention.
First time we had our own trailer, huh?
And everybody was mesmerized by that speech.
Trailer, had our own signs, had our own everything. You know?
Well, that time had come.
That was Marion Berry. We got to take another quick break. Tonight's topic, MLK's Dream Progress Report show. How far have we come since the taking of a king?
855-369. When I was a little kid, I was running around trying to get Marion Berry's autograph.
We're about to take that break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Zometheus Rising, the voice of reason, is back in the building. Foxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98. I know I've been telling you to call, and I'm definitely going to take some callers once they let us know we have some. I know we got some. I just haven't been looking at them. But let me reintroduce you to my panel. If you're just tuning in, you missed Jesse Jackson, the Honorable Jesse Jackson. He came in and dropped Science, as well as Michael Eric Dyson was in the building. But we still have Mayor Marion Berry. We have Ramon, I want to say her name correctly, Ramon Bain. She was the former manager, I think, of Michael Jackson. Is that not correct?
General manager and spokesperson.
General manager and spokesperson. And, of course, we have Reverend Yearwood, president and CEO of the Hip Hop Caucus, as well, and now joining us, he was just kind of taking it in, soaking it in. He was here on time. He was just, absorbing all that was getting laid out. None other than media mogul, correspondent, TV, radio personality. Okay. The first person I asked to be on the show, Brother Jeff Johnson, has joined us here. So let's just get right back into it. If Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were alive today, what are some things that they could be proud of about us as people? Jeff, right off the top.
What could they be proud of?
What could they be proud of?
I don't know. I mean, when I think about both Martin and Malcolm, I think about their propensity for looking at results. Mm-hmm. I think that, sure, they would be proud that there was a black president, but that wouldn't mean anything if there wasn't substantive transformation. Mm-hmm. I think that there obviously is always a historical recognition of what goes on. And so much of what they fought for was for that reality to be able to happen. But after that reality happened, what does then D.C. look like, Baltimore look like, Cleveland look like, Oakland look like, Newark look like? Mm-hmm. And so I think I have a difficult time beginning to say what somebody else who's not here would be proud of. Mm-hmm. But as I begin to look at the breadth and depth of where we are diasporically as black people in America, I mean, I think that they would be proud of young people that, despite the school systems looking the way they do, start their own businesses. Mm-hmm. People that are attempting to take back their communities. Those churches that are not just in the gospel of business, but still in the gospel of speaking the prophetic. Right. I think that there are enough examples of those that they would be proud of people continuing to live out their legacy on a daily basis without a position, without a title, without a budget, without a lot of fanfare. And I think that there are enough examples of those, even though we don't see them on CNN or MSNBC. Right. And those would be the things that they would be proud of, sometimes more than the more ostentatious kind of accomplishments that we've made, that in some cases are ceremonial, but aren't necessarily examples of transitions of power.
Jeff, I can speak.
That's Marion Berry right there.
Without contradiction, that I think the most important thing that he would be proud of is what he fought for. Mm-hmm. As you may remember, Martin Luther King, after the Civil Rights Act was passed, immediately went to Selma, Alabama, at the Pettus Bridge and the marching, and pushed hard. We had the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which has just been phenomenal in terms of power for black people. I think when he went to Selma, we must have had about 13 African-American congressmen. We now have 44. When I went to Mississippi in 1963 to work on voter registration, the population was 40% black, 3% registered, and now Mississippi has the largest number of African-American elected officials in the nation. The legislature and the Congress and the councils and the mayors is where the local power is in terms of making the laws, making a difference. So I think that that's the number one thing that he would be proud of because he worked so hard.
Reverend Yearwood.
For that.
Yeah, I agree with, Jeff and Mayor Berry, but I would just say this too, and this is, I think that, God works in mysterious ways, and we're sitting up here wondering what he would be. And there's so much he would be proud of, but at the same time, I know that we have, because of the storm, they have canceled the dedication. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, that when I came in here, and I have nothing against corporations. I think it's great corporations can sponsor and put forth resources. But the fact that we don't have a lot of poor people and the people from the community, I think being a part of this process, to me, would have been contrary to what Dr. King was fighting for. Mm-hmm. I think that he would have wanted his people to be a part of this process. And I think that there's something, and just me, maybe God and Dr. King said, maybe Dr. King might not be as happy about how it was coming together.
Right. Distinguished panel, let me do this really quickly. Do you guys mind if we receive some calls? Because we got a lot of calls and they want to get in and talk to you guys. Do you mind fielding some questions from our call?
No, don't.
Norman from D.C., you're in the Voice of Reason. It's time to chime. Holla.
Good evening, Foxhole members, Marion Berry. This is Norman from Southeast.
Hey, Norman, what's happening?
All right, man. I try to stay abreast of, man. I'm all excited for commemoration of Martin Luther King and what you fought for. And, man, I'm real proud of you because a lot of people don't know you was part of the struggle before you even came to D.C. And you're a friend of my dad. But I got to continue to speak out against this black-on-black violence, man. We have to somehow bring these young people together so they can understand, the importance of helping one another and solving your violence differently through, other than killing somebody. I got to constantly be heard with that and let it be known, even through Barack Obama. He haven't addressed the issue of the violence in these urban centers. Not in just D.C. You got Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit. There's a lot of black-on-black youth killing each other, man, and we need to address this. Good.
Hey, that's a good point. Let me ask my panel: if King's dream was a baton, do you think we've dropped it? Do you think it's been dropped in some places? I mean, where can we pick that baton back up and create the movement, or restart the movement, jumpstart the movement? What
I think it's been dropped as it relates to poor people. Mm-hmm. As you may remember, Dr. King came to Washington in 1967 with the Poor People's Campaign, trying to call attention to the plight of the millions of poor black folks, white folks too, that were suffering. We have the same problem here now with the economic gap here in Washington, D.C. Between black folks and white folks is as wide as the ocean. $25,000 average salary for black folks, income in this city, $100,000 for white folks. And so I think we've dropped the baton in terms of fighting as hard as we need to fight for those who either don't know how to fight or don't have a fear fighting. But it has to have that voice. We need to march again. We can do all kind of things again.
I agree.
Try to call attention to the plight.
Ramon
Think
Bay.
about it,
I agree with Mayor Berry, who, as I'll say again, I'm very honored to be here with him. When you look at he and Reverend Jackson, and I remember last year we paid tribute to Dr. Haidt and Benjamin Hooks, who passed on. There are not many of the original civil rights leaders left. And for us to be here with Mayor Berry and Reverend Jackson, I'm honored for that. I think one of the problems that we have is in our households, because I recall, and I was saying to you during the break, when President Obama was elected and during his inaugural, it happened to fall on the birthday of Dr. King. They took a poll and they found out that a large majority of American kids didn't know who Dr. King was. So when you don't know who Dr. King is, how can you continue to strive and move and to emulate when you don't even know what the accomplishments and what the sacrifices of he and others were? And I think that is a sad commentary for our families, because we have a responsibility in our households to let our children and our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews know how they got to where they are. Who had to lay down their lives, and the blood, the sweat, the tears, the being bitten by dogs, the water hoses being skeeted in full force, spending time in jail, being beat with clubs. Not many of these young people realize the sacrifices that Dr. King and Malcolm X and others had to go through in order for us to be sitting here, for me to represent Michael Jackson, for you to be on Sirius, for all of our other colleagues to be in the positions that they are. Dr. King and so many others put their lives in jeopardy, and they sacrifice for us to be able to do what it is we're doing. But many of these kids don't realize the personal sacrifices that were made, and we have lacked that in our households to let our kids know, listen, this didn't just happen overnight. There are people who died, who were clubbed, who were beaten.
Jeff? I think that I don't know what poll that is, and I would dispute it.
The one that the kids don't know about?
Yeah,
because
the majority, I think it was a CNN poll.
I would dispute it.
Right.
I'm talking to young people all over the country all day long, every day, and the reality is that Martin Luther King's memory has probably been over-commercialized. And so I think to her point, they don't know the sacrifices, but they know the personality.
Right.
So I'm talking to young people all over the country, and they can tell me they've heard of Nelson Mandela, but they've never heard of apartheid.
Right.
And so it's equally disturbing because even if they know who King is, but they don't know what SNCC was, they don't know what SCLC was, they don't know the processes that these organizations went through or the actual sacrifices that were made, it's equally as disturbing. Because I think they do know who King is. I
was just out in Stockton, California, and I beg the difference. They did not know the contributions that Dr. Martin Luther King made.
They sell Martin Luther King
at McDonald's.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, they sell. That's like if I were to go.
And I think if you were listening, what I said was that they know who he is, but they don't know the sacrifices. So we're not disagreeing.
Or the contributions.
We're not disagreeing
they might
about
not know.
that.
They might not know the ins and outs of Martin Luther King. But at the end of the day, like Jeff is saying, to know the sacrifice.
They can pick Martin Luther King out on a poster before they can pick out their local mayor.
Oh, sure.
Because he's in every church
the issue going back to your original question, which is, was the baton dropped?
Yes.
The baton was dropped in a number of ways, and the baton was dropped beyond the single issues that we're dealing with. The baton was dropped in many cases from an institutional standpoint. So if you talk to Marion Berry about the process that he went through as a young activist, whether it was through SNCC, they got trained. And they got trained through institutional mechanism that even though it was grassroots and it was brothers and sisters in this part of the country or this part of the country getting other young brothers and training them. Nobody sat at a lunch counter that didn't get trained first. There were people that told they couldn't sit at lunch counters because they didn't have the psychological or emotional preparation to be able to take the abuse, to sit there and not strike back. They were trained how to do voter registration. They were trained how to organize people. They were trained how to mobilize people. And where we have dropped the ball, if we talk about the last 40 years, I was a national youth director for the NAACP. I clearly understood that we did not have the training mechanism even within the NAACP that was similar to what those that had come before had been through. So if you want to talk about where the baton got dropped, there was institutional infrastructure that we failed to continue to develop. There was institutional infrastructure that we failed to continue to fund. We did not, like other communities, train our young people how to be soldiers even during times of peace.
Well, I still have to say
Wait,
everybody,
hold on. Marion?
I want to talk about what Jeff.
Marion?
He's exactly right. Take myself as an example. I learned leadership through the Civil Rights Movement, through the Vietnam War movement. There's no such movements around here now. So the young people growing up today have no mechanisms to learn. There are no organized community organizers. There are not a lot of things that are going on. So we have dropped the ball there, Jeff. We need to figure out how we resurrect that situation. We're not going to have another Vietnam War. We might have Afghanistan, et cetera. And we need to figure out. Now, what I did when I was mayor, I created the Marion Berry Leadership Institute as a way of training 500 people, young people, every year to leadership, in terms of what the struggle was all about. The other thing which is missing here, when you talk to young people, even my son, who's 31 years old, the struggle is in their heads to some extent in terms they know about the violence, they know about the Bull Connors and everything, but it's not been incorporated in their hearts to understand what the struggle was really about.
So we were saying the same thing. It starts with the family.
No, it doesn't start with the family. It starts with the institution.
Well, what institution, Marion? It starts with the family.
Family is an institution. I'm talking about.
Go to your corners. Ding, ding, ding.
No, what Jeff and I are saying is that there needs to be some series of mechanisms that young people can get into, can organize, can learn development, and can have causes to fight for and to be about.
And I agree with you all 1,000%.
Yeah.
But you can have 1,000 organizations, and unless that individual, that young person, has a burning desire to be a part of based on what is inherently taught to him, he ain't showing up at that church, or he's not showing up at that community organization.
The point she's making is if it doesn't mean anything to you, why would you participate? Why would you even care?
Right.
That's the point she's making, and I agree with her there.
It starts in the home. It starts in the home.
We all agree, Ramon.
Thank you.
Yes, we agree. We got to take another quick break, but when we come back, maybe we should just.
That.
Yes, thank you guys.
I grew up in the Deep South. I heard it all the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ramon Bain. Thank you, Marion Berry, Reverend Yearwood.
Yes. Yeah. Lord. Yeah. We sell crack to our own out the back.
Yo, we back in the building, and I'm telling you right now, the brakes are on fire. There's a lot of heat up in here. People don't agree about that baton question. It done piss people off.
Before you go on, let me say that Marvin Gaye is a D.C. man.
Okay.
D.C.
Shout out to D.C.
That's right.
Marion Berry.
He's a godfather.
MLK Progress Report show how far have we come since the taking of a king. The voice of reason. Foxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98, 855-369-9898 is the number to dial. We've got, of course, some great guests. We've got Reverend Yearwood. We have former Mayor Marion Berry in the building. We got Jeff Johnson. We've got Ramon. She's a cold piece of work. A lot of people don't know, her involvement with Michael Jackson. Ramon Bain. She used to be his general manager. That's a cold little title right there. Let's get back to it. We were talking about the baton being passed and how, and like you said, Jeff, early on, the youth don't know how to protest. And Marcus King, mentioned that as well when Oscar Grant was killed in Oakland. All of the OGs in Oakland, people who have made it to some level of success in Oakland, whether it's Gary Payton or whoever, they had to speak to the youth to tell them to calm down so that they don't go riot or go on a violent killing spree because of the simple fact that you pointed out. They didn't know how to protest. And that's what I mean by the baton being dropped, right? And some older members of, the civil rights movement back in the day will acknowledge that they didn't really pass it correctly. Because I always tell people,
they passed it correctly.
Wait, there's some people that didn't. Because
I'm saying what they passed correctly might not have been that struggle what they went through. What they passed was that they now have become comfortable, and so what they passed over was.
Are you saying they passed complacency to the youth?
Yes,
That's right.
Who agrees or disagrees with that?
I agree with that. No question about it.
I agree to some extent.
Ramon Bain does not agree.
But let me just say, there is a whole new kind of vibe out here now. Yeah. It's a conflict. You look at who you want to emulate. You see them in Saint Tropez. You see them buying G5s at $35 million and up. You hear about them going into a restaurant buying a $100,000 bottle of champagne. You listen to the lyrics in some of the songs, and it talks money, 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 money. It doesn't talk about let's march, let's protest.
Yeah, but they
let's
pastors saying
stand
that too.
here.
There are some cats that do rap the opposite of that.
But I'm pastors saying it too.
But excuse me, I'm talking about certain concepts out here in our commerce. So you have more conflict now than it was. So when you have those who want to ascribe to be nothing but wealthy, and then you have some who are more socially oriented, then I think the goal is to mesh the two. So that you can be, Marion, you can be socially active, but still try to drive for
wait a minute.
the money.
We've got another caller. Let's let this caller in.
That's right.
Ahmad from Ohio, talk to me. Ahmed from Ohio, are you in the building? Because there's a lot of people in here who want to talk. Talk to me, Ahmed.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thanks for taking my call first. I'm actually a migrant from Eastern Africa, specifically from the island of Comoros. You know, I see a lot of African immigrants and blacks, Africans of blacks of from, let's say, other places like in the Caribbean and South America, and they don't appreciate the fact that African of American descent, American of African descent, African American have actually put down a very solid foundation for all of us to walk on. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for African Americans and all the struggle they went through as an immigrant, the things would have been more harder than, like, let's say, blacks in Europe and other places where they hadn't this kind of foundation laid down. But my question is, and I appreciate that, this is what I tell every black person of American descent, sorry, this is what I tell them. The question here is, though, I don't think the baton has been passed, because when you see the issue with urban failure, when it comes to issues to do with family failure within the African American community, to do with education, to do with all these things, I don't think the struggle continued past Malcolm and Martin Luther King. So my question is, what happened and what went wrong, and what can be done to correct that? Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for the call, man. Ahmed, he said we didn't pass. It was dropped somewhere.
Well, a lot of
and
it
we
was
all know that. We all know that it was dropped. The point is, how do we locate the baton, pick it up, get back on the track, and get the race going again? How do we get back in the game, in the race?
Well, first of all, we have passed some batons correctly, mm-hmm. and some we have just dropped and not looked at. I think the biggest thing that we have dropped is the yearning, the desire to struggle, to stand up, to stand up to anything.
Go deeper.
That's not right.
Go deeper.
To injustices, to stand up to the inequities of economics that happens in this country.
So you mean if something happens in our community, we
kind
of just let it go?
Yeah, we say, we can't do anything about that. If the media kicks our ass about something, we just say, that's the Washington Post.
Jeff?
But Mayor, I think we should talk about the reality, too, that there was a transition, and the transition post-King into the early 1970s, where there was a fight for King's position, but not necessarily a fight for King's movement. What began to happen is a lot of the things that King and others fought for came to pass. And as it came to pass through this integration process, we lost our minds. So as many communities have done a parallel path of let's integrate into the broader society and simultaneously maintain the institutions, the businesses, the infrastructure that we've developed.
Right.
We were like, I just want to go to the damn mall.
Right.
So I don't need to go to these stores anymore, and the black dollar stopped turning over in cities like D.C. D.C. did a lot better job. I think Mayor Berry did a great job of ensuring the kind of economic development and growth and stimulation of dollars in a central city that didn't happen in other places. But you began to see us moving out of communities, investing in other communities, removing infrastructure, turning our back on infrastructure. And as a result of that, we're talking about 2 to 3 to 4 decades of young people that have never thought the development of institutional infrastructure, businesses, the dollar turning over was even a priority.
Right.
And so for us, for my generation in particular, especially those that came up in the 80s, when you're dealing with Reaganomics and an oppressive economic infrastructure to begin with, was like, look, just give me mine.
Right.
And if I can get mine, just for me and my family, then everything is okay.
And then we're good.
There was not a sense of collective. There was not a sense of how do we pull together to create infrastructure in this kind of community.
Well, I think that's because
because the brother asked, what do we need to do?
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of social engineering that we need is so intensive that it's not about one baton.
Right.
And we've got to get out of this notion that there's going to be one leader that's going to lead us to the promised land where milk and honey is going to flow.
Right.
We need a chessboard.
Right.
And we all need to be able to know what role we're playing so that even though we move different and look different and do things different, we're fighting for the same collective kind of development.
Right. And Jeff,
well,
wait
we're
a minute, hold
basically
on.
all saying the same thing, and it's the strive for money and the economics that have pretty much swayed and turned people away from.
No, that's not what I was saying.
Well, that's what it sounded like you were
That's not
saying.
what-
But
that's
that's
what
what
Jeff
it
is saying.
sounded like he was saying.
That's what you
Excuse me.
heard.
That's what I heard, and that's
Right, but
probably
that's not
what
what
other
I
people
said.
heard. Because what I'm hearing you're
I didn't hear
saying,
that.
as people are not spending money in their own communities and they're going out into other communities and everything is economics and they're wanting to go into the malls. That's basically what I and other people were saying earlier. Where do we get that passion again? Where do we get that burning desire again to make a change and to effectuate change?
Ramon, I think you're correct on that too, but I think Jeff made another pretty good point here when he mentioned assimilation. And I think a lot of people don't know the difference with what King was working on. It was integration, not assimilation.
But it wasn't integration. It was desegregation.
It was desegregation, but the point that I'm making
Right.
is you heard that term, integrate. Let's integrate. Let's integrate. Well, when you integrate into something, you remain who you are. You might be in a different system, but you, the individual, remains who you are. When you assimilate, you become a part of the system. So I think a baton was dropped in differentiating the term, because a lot of people thought, okay, if I send my kid to this white school over here, he's going to get a better education. Mm-hmm. That's not always true.
But even the revisionist histories, though, because people keep talking about, people keep talking about we were fighting for integration. We were never fighting for integration. The civil rights movement was never about integration. It was about desegregation. It was about shifting power and equity. It was never about us all being in the same place at the same time. In the name of being there for the sake of being there. It was about shifting resources and power and access for the purpose of being able, for you to never be able to say, you can't tell us where we have to be at any given time and place.
Because you got a lot of people who are disappointed. I mean, I've spoken to many people during this show over the past 3 or 4 years. There were a lot of people who are disappointed in King. Maybe their disappointment is misplaced, but they thought he was responsible for the mass moving out of the neighborhoods, the breaking down of the infrastructure we built up in our own neighborhood pre-integration, pre-civil rights. A lot of people are disappointed with that.
But
let me just say that.
But Marion, this question for you, actually. This is a question for you.
Okay.
This is my question. As we sit here, we have canceled the dedication.
Right.
And so let's just ask a question. Marion, you were around Dr. King. Tell me in your heart of hearts, do you think if we had organized and mobilized to come to D.C. on August 28th, and there was a hurricane on August 28th, 1963, would they have canceled that march?
No. I said it this afternoon.
Well, there you go.
That if civil rights movement people, if it rained or did some other kind of things, thunder, lightning, hurricane, if they had stopped marching, stopped working because the jails were overcrowded, we would not have the gains we have today.
And that's it.
Now, I understand the physical danger, no question about that.
No, we understand that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, freedom is not free.
Right.
You know, like Frederick Douglass says, there's some people who want crops without rain. You know, we got to struggle to make it. But back to Jeff's point. Jeff, I agree with you 1,000%. The only issue we ought to be discussing, how do we get to where we need to go?
All right. We got to take a quick break. We'll be back in a couple of seconds. MLK's Dream Progress Report show how far have we come since the taking of the king is our topic tonight. Please call me at 855-369-9898. Before I go, I want to thank Ramon Bain for coming on the show and sharing her opinion. She's very feisty. You guys I wish we had a camera here during the breaks. It was good stuff, though.
But I want to say this before I leave. I think
okay, see what I mean? She's very feisty.
I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with the panel. And I don't think the baton has been dropped. Jeff, you're carrying that baton. You're carrying that baton. All of you who are sitting there, Dr. King has passed it on to you all. You have immense influence. People listen to you. They respect you. You are very sincere and passionate about what it is you feel. And that's how he was. That's how Reverend Jackson was. That's how my friend Coretta King was. And I think that there are significant accomplishments that have been made. And I would not sit here and say the baton has not been dropped. Marion, with his sacrifices, has passed it on to all of you. And I'm honored to have been on here with each of you. And I want to congratulate you for what you're doing and how you are lifting the banner across the world. People are listening to you. Young kids are being affected by you and what you're saying.
Thank you.
Jeff, people are listening to you. They admire you. And if you don't make a significance to, say, 10,000, but 100, you are making a significant impact here in the U.S. And I just want to thank you all for your accomplishments and for carrying the dream of Dr. King and how
thank
you're
you.
making
Thank you, and I
a
appreciate
tremendous difference.
Thank you. And we're going to break now, and I'll be back in 2.2. Ladies and gentlemen, Zometheus Rising. ZoWilliams back in the building. Woo, this topic is crazy. There's some passion here. MLK's Dream Progress Report Show. Of course, we just basically trying to check the progress of King's dream. How far have we come since the taking of a king? 855-369-9898 is the number to dial. I'm Zoe Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at Zoe Williams. Before I reintroduce everybody, of course, we got Jeff Johnson in the building. We got former mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Berry in the building. We had Michael Eric Dyson, Jesse Jackson. We've got more people in the building. But before I go and deal with them, we got to say goodbye to Reverend Yearwood.
Yes.
Reverend, where are you going? What are you about to do? I mean, this conversation appears to be way more important than whatever else you got cracking right now. So, no, just tell me, where are you about to go, man?
You know, we're going to just continue to organize, but I wanted to say something. I was talking to Jeff during the break, and I asked, Marion Berry the question that on August 28th, 1963, would they have canceled it? And he said no. And the reason for that, they're both saying that because there's no issue. Yes, we're coming to dedicate the memorial, but has to be something more. And I really do believe that we do have that at this time. We have what's going on with police brutality. We have what's going on with healthcare, foreclosure. There's a long list of issues that we can take on. And I actually, as I leave, I actually want to challenge. The panel that's coming because Marion Berry, after the Voting Rights Act, there was 0 mayors before, and now after we have over 600 black mayors. Mm-hmm. We have 40 plus members in the CBC. We have black CEOs. We have blacks in every specter of life, owners, managers. But we are, in some cases, not doing what we need to do. And I think that it's not about losing the baton.
Is it apathy?
No, it's not apathy. But I do think that there is something there that when those who are in that position of power.
What is it? Tell me. Because many people are listening right now. I want you to get to the meat and marrow of it. What do you think it is that's keeping us from really recognizing and realizing the importance of all the things you just mentioned?
In regards to Dr. King, mm-hmm. I think that what we have acquired in the 21st century is that we have created what I would call this new time card activist. And this time card activist is not somebody who is issue oriented or fighting for the people. They are literally going into a problem for a paycheck. They really do not care about the community. If they lose that job, then so does the issue goes as well. And I think we must get rid of that in some way.
So you're saying they're for self?
There are many who, not all, please, there are many. We are seeing that. There are so many who are not that way. But we are seeing that there are many people who have become this kind of time card activist who is now not fighting for the people, but fighting for a paycheck. And I
appreciate you for this.
I'll leave on
wait,
that.
Wait a minute.
It's like, you don't get to leave now.
No.
See, I told you.
Yeah, because I wanted to sort of clarify something. Is that Harry Johnson and the team of people he has put together that the Alpha movement started, Alpha, I'm an Alpha, has done an incredible job of taking us to this far. And I was given my perspective as an individual about what I would do if I were in that position. This is no effort to deprecate or to at all. Nobody said that. I'm just want to say that to myself and to you all, that movement, that monumental task of raising $120 million was phenomenal. On the other hand, you asked me the question.
Yes.
And you wanted me to answer it.
Yeah.
As the person, and I did. Yep. And I still maintain that if I were in charge of it.
Thank you, Reverend.
If I were in charge of it, I would not.
Thank you. Reverend Yearwood, we appreciate you, man. Now we got more guests. And let me reset the topic just to keep you guys on point. MLK's Dream Progress Report show. How far have we come since the taking of a king? 855-369-9898. You're listening to ZoMetheus Rising, ZoWilliams, Foxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98. In the building right now, we've got Jeff Johnson. You know his bio. Follow him on Twitter. You'll see what he does. He's a cold piece of work. We also have former mayor of D.C., Marion Berry, in the building. And now we've added some more female energy to the dogfight. And we're going to talk about this right now. Lisa Anders, LEAD is what it's called? LEAD? That's what it's called. LEAD AP. Senior Project Manager, Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. Listen, she has a bio that's about as long as War and Peace. I'm not going to read the whole thing. And we have Daryl McKissick, right? And she's PE of PMP. What is PE? What is this?
I'm a professional engineer and
that's
a project management professional. And there you have projects over $100 million. Do
you see that? You see that? Were you involved in this whole building process?
A little bit.
So he was just talking about you.
I guess so.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
I was talking about her being part of the solution, not part of the problem.
But no, she helped raise that money.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Yes. We did donate some money.
Talk to me about the process of raising $120 million. It couldn't have been easy.
Well, I'm sure that was a arduous process. And we haven't seen that with our people in a very long time, or maybe never. That's why it's such a great memorial. But that's not what we do. Mm-hmm. We built the memorial.
You built it.
We are the lead design builders for the memorial.
Uh-huh.
It's a joint venture team made up of McKissick and McKissick, Turner Construction, Tompkins Builders, and Guilford. Mm-hmm. And so we were the architects of record, and Lisa, who's here today, that works for our company, managed the construction every day.
Wow. Talk to me about the controversy with the not the architect, but the sculptor guy, the Asian guy. A lot of people didn't like him for some reason. What was that about?
What was that about? He was the best person for the job.
I thought it was excellent.
Anybody that could be one of China's 10 national treasures, and you think about all the people and all the land, beautiful places they have in China, he must be great, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, he was perfect for capturing Dr. King. Mm-hmm. And I personally feel that he did a fantastic job in doing that. And for the last couple of days, I've looked at the people that have visited the memorial, mm-hmm. and it looks like they feel the same thing.
Did we feel like a black man was supposed to, design the monument? I figure if anybody needs another ethnicity to design something for him, it would be Martin Luther King. Let's think of it this way in terms of his philosophy about nonviolence. He was inspired by Gandhi, someone from a different faith, a different culture. And like Jesse spoke of earlier, to be nonviolent takes a tremendous amount of strength, of inner fortitude, right? So for me to have an Asian guy come and say, you know what, I'll design it. Sure, I got it. I thought that was awesome. But when I read the article about the controversy, I felt like, what are we doing? Are we just, complaining for no reason? Talk to me.
Yeah, actually, I think to your point, it was an excellent exhibit of what Dr. King's all about, to bring all people together, and really the foundation put together a vision and wanted excellence to be shown in what they were trying to accomplish and what they were trying to show the world. So the design that McKissick and McKissick laid out to exhibit their vision that they had, all the way through to the sculptor that they picked, I think really shows a sense of togetherness and bringing people of excellence from all over the world, no matter where they come from or what they believe in, but bringing everyone together to put together a memorial that is representative of what Dr. King was all about.
Wow. And let me ask this. Besides building monuments to great men, what else does your firm do? Like, do you guys build buildings, like actual skyscrapers? I mean, what do you guys do? And what have you built? Could we find a landmark real quick?
Sure. Well, first of all, my family goes back 5 generations to my great-great-grandfather.
Wow.
Who came to this country in 1790 as a slave builder and passed the trade of building down to my great-grandfather, who passed it to my grandfather. And my grandfather and his brother started our family business in 1905 in Tennessee. And they designed and built a lot of the historically black colleges and universities, which you know, Marion.
Wow.
And what really put them on the map was the Tuskegee Air Force Base that they designed and built during World War II.
Wow.
But we're doing work on the White House. We were the design builders for the Lincoln and Jefferson Memorials on the Mall. We're the program managers for the African American Museum on the Mall, Museum of History and Culture. We are running D.C. public schools construction, Chicago public schools construction, working on transit lines in L.A. We're doing a whole lot of things.
And I think it's important to have you guys on our show, not just because you guys built the monument, but even if you didn't build the monument, what you are doing is important. And to get that message out there to say, wow, there's some black people 5 generations deep who knows how to do this. So if a young kid out of Compton says, I want to be an architect, right, it's not that far-fetched if he can see something, right, or if she can see something that's real, that's tangible. You guys don't understand how happy I am to have you guys on the show right now.
I mean, Jeff,
Zoe.
It's all right. We all look alike,
The first racial blow.
And a little levity.
Just a little levity.
But I've known Daryl a long, long time. And in fact, I went to school at Fisk University in Tennessee. She didn't mention that her grandfather was the first African-American architect in D.C.
First black trustee at Fisk.
Wow.
Etc. And that this just demonstrates that if you really have a vision and a dream and work hard at it, you can do it. And that she is an African-American woman of great strength and great vision. And there are a lot of others out there, too, but this ought to be an inspiration for those young people who are watching and listening, that you can do it. Anything that you decide you want to do, that's good. If you put your mind at it, if your mind can conceive it, your heart believe it, the body can deliver it to you.
I believe it.
But see, Marion, what we need are leaders like you that support African American businesses, and that's exactly what you've done.
I did it in D.C. 3% when I came in, 78, 27% when I left. Over $2.5 billion of money put in the pockets of black people.
Wow.
I got to go.
Go ahead, read your resume before you leave, though.
Yeah. Well, I got this philosophy. If you don't paddle your own boat, who's going to paddle it? But if you paddle it for yourself, who are you?
Oh, man. Talk to me, man. Appreciate you, Marion Berry. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. We got to take another quick break, but we'll be back at 2.2. Appreciate you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the Police. It's a very political record right here. Spirits in the Material World. You should go check it out. It's really ridiculous. Anyway, ZoWilliams, the voice of reason, is back in the building. We got more guests. We've got more. Man, the conversation has been very, very interesting, and I think instrumental for anybody who wants to affect change. Tonight's topic, MLK's Dream Progress Report Show. How far have we come since the taking of a king? Before I introduce, we have new guests on the panel. But before I introduce anybody, we got to say goodbye to one who has soldiered with me through this process of weeding through the shenanigans that we have gone through since MLK's taking. And it's Jeff Johnson. He has to go. But before you go, man, we need 3 things this community, these young kids need in order to turn it around, in order to find the baton, pick it up, and get on the track and win. How do we do it?
Man, we talked about a lot, and we talked about the reality that there's so much that needs to be done. But if we're talking about 3 small, pragmatic things that no matter who you are, you can do, not just institutional, because I'm loving McKissick and McKissick.
For real.
I think that's where we need to start.
I'm
right?
inspired right now.
No, seriously.
Yes.
Because what we talked about before was institutions, and businesses are institutions. And if we can develop institutions and pass them down, that's where we have real communal power. But you got to be able to read before you get there, right?
Right.
So the first thing that folks need to do is read.
Right.
Read as much as you can get your hands on. I mean, we were talking about USA Today, but the real thing is pick up as many sources as you can. So for young people, whether it's your media takeout and your allhiphop.com
Bossip,
or your Bossip or that stuff, read that. But also read BBC.com and read the Financial Times and read as much as you can get your hands on. So you got a balanced diet of information. That's going to empower you as you move forward. 2, have a real vision. Because so many of us are trying to survive that everything we do is built on surviving and not building. We got to get beyond surviving and get to building. So young people, survival is not enough. Y'all already were created to make it. Now you got to be here to build. And 3rd, begin to create coalitions and partnerships with people. Your relationships are more valuable than almost anything that you have. And so many times people say it's not who you know, but it's not what you know, but who you know. It's what you know and who you know.
Right.
Because a lot of times who you know will get you in the door, but what you know will keep you there.
Wow.
And so we got to make sure that young people understand, build these relationships. Don't manipulate them, but build them and cultivate them. Feed those relationships because they will feed you. But the reading piece and the acknowledgement piece is what will help you once you get in the door and make sure you stay there. Wow. So those are 3 things. And then the one thing for you is, man, it's a shame that this is the first time you invited me on the show. I'm just going to leave it with that.
It's like
and I'm
out. Wow. Appreciate you, Jeff Johnson, in the building. We've got new folk. We got new folk and we got new information. But before I introduce them, I got to introduce the people that have been sitting here already, that have already been introduced. McKissick and McKissick, right?
Right.
You guys are the ones who actually built the monument. The family is 5 generations deep with builders. That's just amazing.
African American.
Introduce yourself again one more time and tell them what you do and who you work for.
Well, I'm Daryl McKissick, CEO and president of McKissick & McKissick.
Wow.
And we are architects, engineers, and construction managers.
Family.
Goes back 5 generations to a slave builder.
And you guys were somebody before you built the monument.
Well, yes.
Somebody talk to me about that. That's cold right there. That's cold piece right there. And of course, your partner?
Yes, my partner is Lisa Anders. But I was just going to add, you know, that we were the design builders for the Lincoln and Jefferson memorials, and the Martin Luther King memorial sits on direct axis in the center of those 2 memorials. Wow. They happen to be presidents. It's a perfect place for a king, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you just tuned in, you just got hit upside the head. Boom. Wow. Lisa, give us a little brief bio on who you are and what you do as well.
Okay. I'm Lisa Anders. I'm a senior project manager. I work for McKissick & McKissick on the construction management side. I have a degree from Howard University in civil engineering. And an MBA as well. I've been in the industry about 20 years and met Daryl McKissick some time ago, and we've stayed in touch. I mean, the world for us is pretty small as far as African American, especially females in this industry. So a couple of years ago, 4 years ago or so, she called me and said, you got to come and work on this memorial. So I said, okay, I'll be there.
Wow.
D.C.'s my hometown, so it was great to come back home and reunite with Daryl and help build the memorial, and then look forward to continuing McKissick to grow.
Wow, this is excellent. I really appreciate this. I mean, you guys are here,
Awesome.
and it makes me feel good. We've got new folk in the building with another story to share, hopefully to inspire the millions of people that are listening right now. Dr. Vanessa J. Weaver, let's get it correct, is the CEO and founder of Alignment Strategies, Inc., a Washington, D.C. management consulting firm specializing in management consulting, diversity management, and business development. Dr. Weaver has more than 25 years of experience in organizational management and human resources. Again, another phone book sized bio that we're not going to go all the way in, but she's going to tell us. She's going to tell us her story. She's also here with her partner in a different way, her husband, right? Joseph Coleman, right? Joe Coleman is a consummate entertainment professional, renowned as a double triple threat.
Double triple. Who came up with that?
What kind of statistic? Right. He's an accomplished singer, actor, and performer. Joe's double triple threat comes from his acclaim as a theatrical composer, songwriter, and astute businessman. Well, you know what? Enough of your phone book as well. Let's just get right into it.
I have to tell you that the other thing about Joseph, he's the lead vocalist of the Platters. So he goes back. You, sweetie.
What's the name of the group?
The Platters.
Do we have any music from the Platters? I would love to hear something.
Note. He could hit a note.
Only you can make this world seem right.
Why are you playing? we got the people in here, don't we? And you know, we're in Washington, D.C., and of course people think super couple. They think Michelle and Obama. Michelle and Barack, but look at this here.
Yeah, we often go down on 16th Street and stand out in front of the White House.
With our sign.
What's up? What's going on? It's another couple in town up in here.
Right. So let's talk about MLK, the legacy, where we are today, and where we can go to the future. I'd like to see, and a lot of people, make this argument about hip hop music, and I'm glad you're a musician. You can share this. A lot of people will say hip hop is negative. Hip hop is hyper masculine. Hip hop is misogynistic, and it might be, it might be those things, but not all of it.
Right, that's right.
And just like we don't know that there are other black couples out there that are great, and it isn't just Michelle and Barack, but it's you guys too. Mm-hmm. I think there's an element of hip hop that gets overlooked, that needs a platform that says, hey, we're saying positive things, we're saying meaningful things. Mm-hmm. Tell me how music is different from the way you used to swoon a girl to the way it is now.
Okay, now I have to start by saying I'm a songwriter, right? Mm-hmm. So the premise of writing songs is to say a lot in with very few words. A. B, we want you to think about what we're saying. We don't want to just lay it on the table for you, the whole story. We want you to start figuring it out and kind of add your flavor to it.
It's like follow me.
Yeah,
follow me.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, my problem with the lyrics of today is everything is so raw until it's like there's nothing left to the imagination. I mean, I say, I think we could all write that song in a way. You know what I'm saying? because we didn't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about these lyrics. I'm going to lay you down and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to,
Joy, you saying you guys have more talent?
We're saying we had a different way of getting our message across.
Right.
We wanted you to think about
more subtle.
The more subtle approach.
Mm-hmm.
I may well be asking for exactly what you're asking for.
But I'm going to say it differently.
But I'm going to say it in a way that you'll say, he's showing me a little respect here. Come on, baby. Come on. No. Listen, darling, what are you thinking?
Dr. Vanessa, do you agree?
Absolutely. That's how he talks to me.
that's how he kept you for so long.
Right. No, but you think with the passing of Nicholas Ashford, you think about the beautiful songs that he and Valerie wrote. Mm-hmm. It really does personify what Joseph is talking about. Just putting more thought, more passion, more love, and more respect in the music.
But let me go back though. Yes, to your point, there are some young cats that are have something to say. You know, the music bit. You know, the business of music is an impediment for them because they would much rather the powers that be would much rather put that other stuff out there.
Right.
And that's why you hear that so much more often than the let's say the KRS Ones and them guys who
look at you. Go ahead. I see you.
You know what I mean? that had a little something to talk about. That have something. And there's some really serious artists out here, but they kind of have to find another way to get their word out and their music out. I mean, it survives because it's just that good.
But you know what? We are a train wreck society. We like to watch the train wreck. This is why the Basketball Wives is such a big show, and we like to just see the mess.
The mess.
But my question is, how can something that is meaningful, something that is powerful, something that might even be inspirational, have the same kind of impact as the mess? Do you understand what I'm saying? How can we, kind of infuse this meaning into this young group of kids that are coming up with access to tools that, when we were growing up, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Twitter, Facebook, and all of these other means of getting content. How do we get them to connect to something more meaningful and use that energy, this tremendous energy, to impact people in the way, say, like Public Enemy did for us when I was young, So how do we do that?
It's a good question. About 4 years ago, Joe and I decided to embark on this project to create a musical that told the story of the role that women played in the civil rights movement. And because we felt like that was a story that was undertold. And when you think about the great movements within that the civil rights movement, there were black women, white women, women of color that were really major architects of that. And so we decided to put that story to music, and we told it through the eyes of Dr. Dorothy Height, who was often the only woman in the room. And what's so interesting about this whole march on, the I Have a Dream speech is that speech almost didn't happen.
Wow.
Because of the altercation between the men the night before. So Joseph wrote the music, and we raised the money. And not only did we tour the musical, but we also took it to schools. And it was interesting that many people tried to dissuade us from going to schools because they said that young black kids would not relate to this music, or Latino kids wouldn't pay attention, and we need to have police, and we need to have all of this kind of stuff. And we went into communities where there were gangs, like in Chicago. And so we did not only the musical in the evening, but every day we did a free musical, and we brought the students in. So we might have had 2,000 students who came.
Wow.
And it was phenomenal, the kind of response they had to that story. And they sat there and said, no one has ever told us this. I didn't know about this. The only thing I knew about Dr. King was I Have a Dream speech.
Wow.
I didn't know who Mary McLeod Bethune was. I didn't know the fact that there were white women who were also in the whole Wednesday in Mississippi movement that were critical to the success of that movement because they were really transporting people in and out of dangerous territory in their cars. And so we saw for a musical that was 2 hours long that those kids sat for 2 hours. When we had a break, 5 minutes, they were back in their seats. And they were just rocking and rolling with that music. And it taught us a lesson because I think we play down to our kids. We give them less. And Dr. Height would always say that if you really want to inspire a person, inspire them at their highest level, not at their lowest.
Not at their lowest, right.
And so,
but I also think we need to give them something constructive to do. And that's what we do. We're pushing more of our young people to go into science and math and engineering, and trying to we sponsor and support a organization called ACE that really is pushing high school kids to go into engineering because it's truly not enough of them, and we need them here in the United States. We're hiring people from other countries to come and build our facilities here in the United States. It's ridiculous. And that's what our kids should be doing.
So really quickly, do you, the Miss McKissick and McKissick crew, do you guys have like a nonprofit organization or something like that that's in place to kind of pull kids in, that gives them some kind of workshop or something like that? Do you have
We
that?
support organizations that do that. I mean, education of our youth is one of my true passions. So we support organizations that send kids to college, that get them interested at a young age in math and sciences.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I should tell my young...
we have an intern program with our company.
That's awesome.
So I should tell my young 14-year-old son,
Yes.
he just had 9th grade orientation today, right? I should tell him to not think about doing law. He wants to do law.
No.
I should say, don't do law.
No.
Because he's got really high math grades.
Yeah. He needs to be an engineer.
He needs to be an engineer. Well, I have an uncle who's an engineer, and I have a cousin who's about 2 years younger than me who's also an engineer. So I was like, well, maybe law, because he likes to debate, but maybe not, right?
You can debate a lot in engineering.
Can you?
A lot of negotiation.
Is that what we do? Okay, well, I'll talk to him about it.
I have one thing, back to affecting the students. I think the generation that's in between the civil rights and the young, we've kind of gotten to a point where we're successful. But we're so busy sometimes, we don't give the time to the younger students and younger people to bring them along. And on the Martin Luther King Project, the joint venture wanted to do something that was representative of Dr. King's principles. So we took our money and the subcontractors' money, and we did a community service project, but we didn't build houses and things like that, which normally comes to mind to builders. But we put together a scholarship program, and we gave 10 high school graduating seniors $5,000 scholarships each as a result, and
Apple
from this
computers.
project. And we gave them Apple MacBooks, and they're all, it was for minority high school seniors in the Washington metropolitan area who were going into architecture, engineering, or construction. And it was just amazing. It taught us all something, even as builders. If you just give a little bit of time and energy to the students,
they'll spark.
They
They'll
will
grow.
spark. And that also gives them a lifelong relationship with us, people in the profession who are going to come back, and they can rely on us.
Wow, we're about to take another quick break. ZoMetheus Rising, the voice of reason on Foxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98. We got to take a quick break, but we will be back. 855-369-9898. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoMetheus Rising, the voice of reason, is back in the building. I mean, if you're just tuning in, tonight has been a phenomenal night. I mean, this is a special voice of reason, but tonight has been incredible because so many heavy hitters that you probably wouldn't see on 106 and Park or BET or no disrespect to them, but you just wouldn't see them. And we've highlighted all kind of folk tonight. I mean, we had Jesse Jackson. That was crazy. It was surreal. I damn near couldn't even do the interview. But we got heavy hitters in the building with us right now. Two beautiful sisters from the McKissick and McKissick firm. It's crazy. They actually built the Martin Luther King Monument.
African-American women.
I like to say sisters.
Okay,
we know what
whatever.
it is. Who else is sisters in the world? Is the other little Mexican lady sister? No. I don't know. Right. We got two beautiful sisters from the McKissick and McKissick firm. They actually built the monument, which is crazy. We've got the lead singer from the Platters. We just played his record. I mean, I don't know how many children were made to that record. But he did it. He's responsible. And, of course, his lovely wife, Dr. Vanessa J. Weaver. Joe Coleman is in the building as well. Yeah. Listen, let's just get back into it. To my McKissick and McKissick sisters, I mean, 5 generations, and it started with slave builders. What do you think your ancestors would think that now, they've progressed from slavery to this point to build the monument for an African-American slain civil rights leader, and the placement of that monument is between 2 presidents? What would them slave people would be like, Lord have mercy, Jesus. We done came far. Tell me.
I think it's a reason why we had an earthquake here in D.C. this week.
The shake-up, huh?
It truly is a shake-up. But I would say that my ancestors would be very proud. I know that I am just honored to be a part of the memorial. And when I think about what they had to overcome for me to be here today, it's amazing. Because if you think about being a slave builder and then passing the trade down so many years and starting a business over 100 years ago, and they were doing plans for people on the other side of town, and they couldn't even get a license at that time.
Wow.
To come to the point where you are designing a memorial on the National Mall is just absolutely amazing.
It's surreal.
And it's the dream.
Yeah.
It's Dr. King's dream.
So we know that the dedication was canceled due to Hurricane Irene, but I have to ask this question: how do you think people will feel like when they actually go and walk and just see it? Because I haven't seen it yet. I ain't been over there yet, but I'm going.
See it.
Well, I mean, before I've seen people see it now, because over the last couple of days people have been looking at it. But prior to that, I would always say that I would hope that people would feel inspired, because Dr. King is walking out of this stone of hope, which is inspiration. And now that I've been there and I've seen people look at it, and I've seen 2 and 3 generations of families sitting there talking about the movement, and people walk away proud and inspired, and they feel that they can believe in a dream, which is so important. Because if you think about it, the Alphas, 20 years ago when they came up with this concept, to come together as brothers and to raise $2 million. I mean, I can stand up and just shout on that, okay? But they were the catalyst for all of these other people to raise all of this money. And then when you actually go to the mall, and I know the challenges that my clients went through for this memorial to be where it is, and even after it was designated as the location, all that they had to go through to get the memorial to be what they wanted, to have the freedom to have a memorial that they wanted on the mall, was a challenge.
Wow.
And I always say it was more than just man. It was a movement.
It had to be.
It was a movement. And it just lets you know that if you believe, you can truly achieve.
Wow.
And you see that when you go there. So inspiration.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't want to be remiss, though, and everyone talks about the Stone of Hope, which is amazing. But the other part of it, which is the real emotional experience, is the inscription wall.
Yes.
Has 14 of Dr. King's quotes on the ideals of hope, justice, democracy, and love. And they're concise quotes that speak to us and generations unborn. And until we achieve what his dream is, it will always be relevant.
Right. And I got to just say, I love the placement of the monument in between the 2 presidents. I love the placement because they didn't get it right when they placed Martin Luther King Boulevard in the hood across across the nation. They didn't get it right. If you go to any state and you go to MLK Boulevard, it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem. So I think you guys got the placement right, and I appreciate that. Lisa, really quickly, how do you think African Americans in corporate America are honoring Dr. King's principles? Do you think they're doing a good job, or do you think they're out for self? That's what Jeff said.
I heard what Jeff said. I think it's mixed. I think you can't just say it's all one way or the other. But in corporate America, I think we still have sort of the problem where we don't feel like we have the full freedom unless you get to work for McKissick & McKissick, because it is an African-American-owned firm, and together we grow. But when you're in a majority firm in corporate America, you still, I think, as an African-American, feel some limitations. So sometimes it's difficult to still reach back, I think, because people are concerned about self. But sometimes you just have to overcome that and do what's right. And I think ultimately you will be rewarded, and obviously those that you're bringing along will have an opportunity that they didn't have before.
What do you think about the dynamic between professional men and women? What do you think? Is there some tension there? Do you think?
You mean amongst the African Americans?
Amongst African Americans, yeah. Is it enough of us there? Because I hear you guys outnumber us kind of drastically.
Well, I will say this. I had a great experience working with the foundation because they were actually, it's led by African American men, and working together with them and our companies and the mix of men and women together on that project as the leaders from the foundation working with the leaders from the design build team. I think that was a great example of us working together in a more equitable situation, but I'm not sure about the rest of corporate America on that one.
Wow. Vanessa, doctor,
yes.
Right? And, of course, Joe Coleman. Joe, you have an extensive background in the music industry. Music is a conduit. It's a vessel, right? It inspires us to do, great things or horrible things.
Yeah.
Where do you see the music industry growing today? And if you see some problems in it, what are some solutions to turning it around?
I see some problems, but interestingly enough, what I see it is going back to a form of what it was. I see the young guys who are starting to, those that I see that are getting a little frustrated with the direction of the current music, although some of it is very good. Mm-hmm. They are reaching back. I find, I had a conversation with Q-Tip a while back, and he was talking about how much time he spends in the vault these days, listening to that old music, trying to get that thing back, because the new music became formulaic after a while. There's a formulaic thing that's going on.
This is a pop song. This is an R&B record. This is a hardcore.
And all that and that stuff. And so you got away from just the heart
passion
of the music and what it actually can do to people's psyche. You know what I mean? To drive them to a higher calling, to another place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I used to say this about Michael Jackson. If you read Michael Jackson's lyrics, they were corny. Like, just take I'm Bad.
Yeah.
That was a corny record. Your butt is mine. Wait a minute. What is he? Where are we going? But he was such a passionate performer.
Absolutely.
That it was awesome. Yeah. And I believe that these young guys are so into swagger and being cool that they miss, that magic ingredient that takes good music and elevates it to great music. It's passion that's the conduit.
I'll tell you what I see right now. They get to be stars before they're a star. You know what I mean? They come out, they got a record, and all of a sudden they come out, boom! You see me? Hey, I know, a young, I was an audience in this young guy, and he was talking about the next Michael Jackson, this, that, and the other, about this kid. And he had some talent. I'm not saying he didn't have any talent. But he came out on the stage, and it was very clear that he was expecting that everybody just going to be into it because he was on the stage. You know
wow.
what I mean?
Just because I'm here, you should like me.
Yeah, he wasn't giving us anything. He was singing the song, but as a singer of songs, I know that passion, without the passion, you do not get to the essence of any song. I don't care what kind. It's up-tempo, if it's supposed to be a funny, happy song, sad song, song about your mom, whatever it is. If you don't get to the passion of it, nothing happens.
Wow.
And here he was just singing.
And nobody cared.
Nobody cared. And I'm talking about a young audience. He was a kid. I was in the audience because I like working with young people about music and kind of training them on how this business goes and how to perform on stage and how to deal with those contracts and all that stuff. I want them to know,
right?
Because in my era, coming to my era, a lot of the cats did not know, and they ended up with absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So I was there with a lot of young people, and they were not feeling this guy because he was a star when he walked out. Okay, hey,
nobody
I'm
cared.
A star.
Wow.
And so that's what we got to get back to.
Right.
And the young guys that I'm starting to see now, starting to reach back.
They're starting to
reconnect to that old music, because it's like, wait a minute. Motown is 60s and 70s music, and it sounds as good as today, as ever. Can compete with any Jay-Z song in terms of fidelity and the quality of the tune.
Right. So let me ask your wife, Dr. Vanessa J. Weaver. Mm-hmm. You're the CEO of a powerhouse company. Mm-hmm. A juggernaut in your field, Alignment Strategies, Inc. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about your consulting and what you do for businesses.
Well, we work with companies like American Express and Goldman Sachs and IBM. And what we do there is to really work with the leadership in the company to make sure that women and people of color, particularly African Americans and Latinas and Asians, really get a fair shake.
Wow.
So we look at issues of what does it take to, number one, get them in, keep them in, and then advance them to senior levels in the organization.
Wow. And nobody knows about this. Well, somebody knows about it, but our people don't know about it.
Yeah, it's a $27 billion industry.
Wow.
So it's a lot. A lot of companies are doing a lot of work in terms of how they can really use diversity, leverage diversity, really, to be more competitive globally.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. Man, this has been an amazing show. I really appreciate everybody who's come out and contributed to it. It has been, I'm blown away. I need to come to D.C. more often. But come on down. Minus the hurricane. Right. But let me just thank each and every one of you guys for coming out. I appreciate the work you have done, McKissick and McKissick, on the monument. So many people are going to be blown away when they actually go over there and touch it and feel it. Mm-hmm. I appreciate the doc and her crooner, her husband. I appreciate you. Yes, this has been a wonderful show.
We appreciate you.
It's been
doing this show.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate it all. So call me, reach out to me at ZoWilliams on Twitter, at ZoWilliams Twitter. That's where I am. We can talk, communicate, do what we do. Thanks everybody for calling in. I know I didn't get to you, but we've got to go. Appreciate you. See you next week.